So the objective is for me to teach you how to roll the fondant paper thin and to cover a prepared buttercream cake with a skin of fondant, thereby giving your customers the look they're looking for, plus the taste. Because if the fondant is paper thin on buttercream, it will also melt in the mouth. One of the things that you need to keep away from in order to be successful at rolling the fondant super thin is to keep away from cornstarch and powdered sugar. Both those powders have a detrimental drying effect to the fondant, so don't use it. Put a little shortening on your hands, work the fondant into your hands. Fondant likes warmth, and working with a silicone mat, roll the fondant out thinly. Do not use cornstarch or powdered sugar because that will cause the fondant to dry and crack, especially if you're a little slow at rolling or you have some detailed work that's going to take time. So work it without shortening, without powdered sugar, without cornstarch, roll it super thin and cover your cakes. And you're going to find it a lot more proficient, a lot easier to work with, and you're going to have a lot less wastage because it's not going to dry it out. So let me take you over to the table, and I'm going to show you how to roll the fondant thinly and to cover your cakes proficiently without either cornstarch or powdered sugar. So let's start. Because it's a square dummy, we're going to work with more surface area, therefore more fondant. If you look on the Satin Ice website, that will give you a very good idea of how much fondant you're going to need per size. And the amounts that are shown on the website will give you a good indication of enough fondant to cover your cake with trim off, weight-wise. Make sure that your fondant is nice and warm. Fondant likes warmth. It doesn't like to be cold. Do not microwave it. You've all tasted a bagel put in the microwave. See how chewy it becomes? The same happens to fondant. It toughens up in the microwave. So don't be tempted to do that. If the fondant is cold, sit it next to the ovens and turn the bucket for a while. Just half an hour next to the ovens, and that should warm it up nicely. If you know, especially in winter, that you're going to be working with fondant the next day, covering cakes, bring your fondant up the night before and let it get to room temperature. Don't bring it up from ice cold. It is almost impossible to knead up and roll once it's cold. The warmer it is, the easier it is to roll and to knead up. Your fondant's been in an air-conditioned room all night, so you really have to work your muscles today. I'm not using any cornstarch or powdered sugar. I'm using my silicone mat as my guideline. This is going to help me roll. It's going to give me my sizes. If you have a look at these mats, these are the Atiko mats. They're silicone on both sides. It will give you an indication of where you're going with your size. I've done so much of this that I know pretty much where I'm going. We have a 10-inch dummy here. And you're going to work with your size. So no matter what size your dummy is, you need to count in your size. If it's a 10-inch dummy and you have 4 inches on each side, you know you have to roll your fondant to at least 18 inches. And I like to add another 2 inches for good measure. If it's a little bit longer than what you need, you're going to find that the creases and the folds will fall on the table and not on the base of the dummy. So always roll it a little longer, a little larger than you need. 12-inch dummies here. I did order 10-inch for you, but we have 12, so you've got a little bit more work to do today. Press the fondant out on the table to get a good start. Polish it with your hands. The palms of your hands are the warmest part of your hands, so polish it with your hands. You can start by rolling. I like to use the nylon white rolling pins as opposed to the rolling pins that have handles on them. Roll out with the rolling pin, getting this nice and level. Now, when rolling, one's inclined to roll like this. It's easier to get the outer edges nice and thin. The middle is always a bugbear. It's always difficult to get that middle nice and thin. You're going to find that rolling pins that have handles on the edge make it even worse because all your pressure is going on the edge, and you're going to find that the edges will be thin and the center will be quite thick. With these, let's pretend that these are our nice white rolling pins. You're going to actually push from the middle out. Now, what most people do is they go down and they put all their weight into it, and you end up with this little ditch. You don't need to have any little ditches because that makes it even more work to get that level. So the thing is not to use your shoulders and your arms because you're going to get very tired and you're going to ache at the end of the day. So you're just going to hold it like this and put your weight on it. That's why God made me chubby. He knew that I would have all this fondant to roll out. I needed the weight. So just push from the center. Don't put too much pressure on there. You don't need to work that hard. It will gradually spread out on its own. And what I'm effectively doing here is I'm using the fondant in the middle to get my distance. So instead of stretching out just the edge, you're stretching from the middle. This means that your middle is going to be, or should be, and I'm going to test all of yours before you cover your cake, and put your hand up, and I'm going to come with a little wheel and see how thick it is in the middle. Because it's really important. The middle is the most part of the cake that the people are going to be eating. So you don't want it thin on the edges and thick in the middle. So focus on that middle. Keep working it. Flip your mats around. Don't worry if you come off the edge of the mat. I know that you only have half mats there, and the dummies are quite large. When you roll, make sure that you focus on the edges too, because if you don't, they will dry and they will crack, and that will cause tearing. So work your edges. I'm going to let you roll your fondant a little thicker than we would for a cake. When I roll my fondant for my cakes, I roll it to 1/32 of an inch. It is paper thin. I'm going to let you roll yours to 1/16 because we have no buttercream underneath here to prevent it from tearing on the cake dummy. So you're going to roll yours to 1/16 of an inch, not a quarter. I need 18 inches. Try not to do this. You're wasting a movement. Time is money. Don't waste the backward move. And when you're working with volume cakes, a volume amount of cakes, every second counts. It would be nice to go home a couple of hours earlier because you've saved minutes through the day. Agreed? Put your feet up a couple of hours earlier. Nice cup of tea. And because we're not using cornstarch or powdered sugar, you can actually patch up. If I have too much here, I can pull it up, put it over here, and just roll that in. Dry will not stick to dry. This is not dry. We don't have powder on it. So you can just patch it up. Pick it up on your mat. And you're going to flip that over your cake. Having it on the mat allows you to position it to make sure you have it centered. Gently peel the mat away. On a square cake, work the corners first. Open the fondant up. Polish. Always polish with your hands to give it that nice satiny look. If you do happen to tear, it's easy to put together because it's not dry. Open up your folds. And with the warmth of the palms of your hand, keep your fingers off the cake. Fingers off, just working with your palms. I do work with my thumb. I work in this part of my hand to get my edges nice and smooth and soft. And there it is. Trim it up. Whatever you've trimmed off here has not been contaminated with cornstarch or powdered sugar. It's not dry. Put it back in the bucket and you can just reuse it. And there you have your fondant. It feels like a baby's bottom. So if you want to come over here quickly and roll your hands over the top, just to feel how soft and silky it is. Trim it off. The faster you work with it, the more proficient you become, the easier it is because the fondant doesn't dry. So speed is of the essence. Look at all of this that I haven't contaminated with powdered sugar or cornstarch. So rolling it thin is going to save you money, and so is this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn.